This is the General Assembly of the United Nations at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a given day. Kindly note, the room is empty, but this is due not to a long lunch hour, not to the end of the world, not to any labor trouble on the ambassadorial level. The representatives of the nations of the world are at this moment watching their television sets and listening to their radios much as the people in the countries they represent throughout the earth. For as we will soon see, this is a rather momentous afternoon. Perspiring, haggard, and torn, the room loaded with reporters, TV cameras, and a myriad collection of shouting, gesturing, milling people. Cameramen keep shouting to the secretary to turn this way and that way for a better shot. Radio technicians keep thrusting microphones closer to his face, and throughout, the secretary pleads, exhorts, supplicates for a semblance of sanity in this room. Please, please, may we have quiet, please. Would you give me your attention? I have prepared a statement. I say I have prepared a statement. May I read it now, please? Would you give me your attention, please? And quite gradually takes hold, and all eyes are on him as he rises and picks up a typewritten sheet. He dabs at the perspiration on his forehead and grips the paper more tightly to stop his finger from trembling. Ladies and gentlemen, I should like to recapitulate the events of the past 11 days. On the 14th of March, shortwave broadcasts were received in the principal capitals of the world. These messages very obviously did not originate on Earth. This has been scientifically attested to. Rather, they came from an extraterrestrial race calling themselves the Cosmonauts. The first message was somewhat cryptic, announcing merely that they were landing multiple crafts at various points around the Earth. We were further told that these landings would be peaceable and that we should take no alarm. These broadcasts continued over the past several days, each growing somewhat stronger than its predecessor. In the room, the drone of the interpreters' voices continue underneath. At 11 this morning, Eastern Standard Time, the first of these landings took place in an area just outside of Newark, New Jersey. We have subsequently had reports of other landings in the Soviet Union and Norway, the south coast of France, and the area around Rio de Janeiro, and several others. As of this moment, we have not seen the occupants of the craft that have landed. And speaking on behalf of the United Nations, I can tell you that at this moment it would be premature to assume hostile intent on the part of those Cosmonauts. So, it is the position of the United Nations that the world population remain calm, to make no hostile move, and to keep in mind that all governments are being appraised of the events as they happen.
What do they look like?
The room is full of several other people. What do they look like, they say.
What do they look like? Why are they coming? Who are they?
Please, please. As of this moment, we don't know what they look like or who they are. We know only that several of their craft have landed and that... The double doors suddenly swing open and several guards enter along with a man in a civilian suit. Obviously some kind of dignitary. He rushes across the room over to the Secretary General and whispers something in his ear.
What's going on? What's happening?
The Secretary General mops his brow again. It seems that one of the craft has just landed a few blocks away, and one of the representatives is on his way to this building. He wipes his brow again. It appears that the Cosmonaut will be here presently. He has requested an audience with his organization. He looks at the dignitary again, who nods and then looks up at the clock. Secretary General takes a deep breath and sits down. So, for the moment, I would ask you again to all remain calm. One of our visitors will very shortly make himself known. The double doors have been closed, but they suddenly begin to open. And the silence is suddenly broken up by creaking doors. A giant shadow crosses the threshold. The Secretary General, eyes widening, looks first, eye level, then slowly he looks up. The alien too lifts its eyes. We hear the clump, the clump, the clump of the footsteps as they enter the room. And the Secretary General gets up slowly. The giant back of the cosmonaut, who walks very slowly and purposefully toward the desk at the far end of the room, towers over him. The creature must be at least 10 feet tall, and the cosmonaut's fingers drum on the table, a huge hand on a small surface. It's vast, all-enveloping, and when he finally does toward us, we see that his face, while humanoid in general appearance, is almost as if somebody had been sculpturing it and had left the job prematurely. It has 2 eyes, very wide apart, a small opening that passes for a nose, and a tiny, almost imperceptible circular hole that passes for a mouth. But when the creature speaks, the face remains immobile, and the voice has a tinny, recorded quality. It slowly moves around the room, right hand in the traditional gesture of peace. Ladies and gentlemen of Earth, we greet you in peace and friendship. We come from a planet far beyond the known universe, a planet far more developed than Earth. The creature turns away as if searching for words. Our intentions are honorable. We desire above all things to help the people of Earth to establish embassies here, and in the future to set up reciprocal visits between Earth and the cosmonauts. Speaking on behalf of the government for the people of Earth, we bid you welcome. Do you have a name? Not in the accepted sense, so you need not make reference to me by name, but feel free to ask me any questions at all of any nature. The cosmonaut looms over every human in the room. We have many questions, but for the moment I think we are most interested first in how you discovered us, how you know our language, the nature of your own planet, its political and social makeup. First of all, we must make the following admissions. We do not know your language, and further, our own method of communication are mental rather than verbal. Hence, the voice you hear me speaking with is totally mechanical. Your words, or rather your thoughts, are fed into an automatic translator, and my responses are in turn electronically altered to simulate those vocal sounds. So you can't speak then? Speak? He looks away. Speak. Not in the sense that you Earth people can speak, but as to the other questions, our planet is not known to be astronomically. It lies far beyond your knowledgeable universe. But it is a technological, highly advanced planet. Its politics and social makeup is highly complex and cannot describe it to you without first educating you in some basic of our mores and habits. The general sits down slowly. There's nothing ulterior in our motives. Nothing at all. You will discover this for yourselves before too long simply by testing the various devices that we make available to you. We can show you, for example, how to add nitrate to the soil, end famine on Earth for good and all. We ask only that you... He looks at the book again. Trust us. Only that you simply trust us. We transport ourselves to the decoding room, where lining the walls in profusion are charts, cylinders, electronic cryptographs, and telegraph cipher machines. There are 3 men in the room. Mike Chambers sits at a desk and pores over several volumes, constantly cross-referencing the notebook of the cosmonaut. Chambers is in Mufti, but the other 2 are field-grade officers. Well, Chambers, what have you got? Chambers looks up from his work, rubs his obviously fatigued eyes, and shakes his head. It's a corker of a migraine headache and eye strain. So you can't lick it. Not in 8 hours, I can't, Colonel. It took us almost a year to crack the Japanese code, and we had an army of men working on it. He points to the papers in front of him. There's a language of people from outer space, probably 500 times as intelligent as we are, and 1,000 times more complex. So you need help. Well, all donations are gratefully accepted. But I showed this stuff to every man on our staff, and I've had a dozen people working on it since late last night. He looked at the papers in front of him, reaches over and turns the notebook around. We tried pretty much everything. Simple transposition, double transposition. We tried every known method of cryptography that there is. There's a single line of strange-looking letters. I don't know whether we've even come close or if we're still a million miles away. So you can't decipher it. We can keep trying, that's all. Standard, direct, reversed, systematically mixed, keyword mixed, random mixed, reciprocal, conjugate. Every nature of sequence of letters that we are come up with. But I'm gonna tell you something right now, Colonel. This is a tough nut. This is a real tough nut. Important, is it? I don't know. The Knamet, or whatever he calls himself, dropped this yesterday at the UN. All we know about it is that he was making reference to it every third line he spoke, and the White House seems to feel that if we could decipher this book, we might be able to decipher the Knamets themselves. Do they need deciphering? They've done all right by us so far. Parlor tricks. They don't seem like parlor tricks, Colonel. That nitrate device they demonstrated in Argentina this morning. 6 hours later, that soil had more vitamins in it than a drugstore chain. I know that country. That's as barren and fruitless as any place on Earth, and there are actually weeds growing in it 6 hours after the nitrate process was used. We might lick this, and we might not. He looks up. I've got a strange feeling that... What? Chambers looks back down to the book and slowly closes it. That we're looking a gift horse right in the mouth. And I've got another funny feeling too. And that is if these Knamets are as helpful as I think they are, you two boys will be without a job. Probably so will I. And very likely so will the whole UN. You won't need armies or navies or air forces or security divisions on world courts. I think they'll all be obsolete. Am I to assume, Chambers, that this is a scientific analysis or some Kentucky windage? I don't know what it is, Colonel. Beyond an instinctive feeling. This instinctive feeling tells me that when this Earth gets enough to eat, when there aren't any more wars or disease or famines, this is going to be a Garden of Eden that stretches from pole to pole. Well, your optimism is refreshing, Mr. Chambers. But for the first time being, I consider it a personal favor, not to say a direct order from the Chief of Staff, that you continue your process of deciphering until you can break this code or this language or whatever it is and tell us precisely, and I mean precisely, what the book says. Pat Brody enters the room. She looks briefly at the Colonel and carries the stuff over to Chambers and puts it on his desk. His face is tired from strain, but at this moment shiningly triumphant.
We've licked the title of it anyway.
What does it say? Can you translate it? Pat points to a sheet of overlay, which he puts on top of the Knamet's notebook. We see the title superimposed over the Knamet's title, and it reads, To Serve Man. That makes the cheese a little more binding, doesn't it, Colonel? Our visitor's little textbook bears the following title, To Serve Man. I'd call that a reasonable, altruistic phrase, wouldn't you agree? Pat looks at the paper in the Colonel's hand, then over to the notebook. then to a newspaper draped over the corner of the desk with a picture of the Knamet standing out in sharp relief. She moves over to the paper and studies it, then looks up.
I'd like to believe it, but
She looks up from a frowning face.
I don't know what to think.
The Colonel slowly puts the paper down and stares at the notebook on the desk. To serve man. To serve man. Well, I hope so. I fervently hope so. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the standard instruments for testing the truth of a statement. Our first object, since the physiology of the Knamet is unknown to us, was to determine whether or not they react to these tests as human beings do. We will now repeat one of many experiments which were made in an endeavor to discover this. He points first to the dial. This instrument registers the subject's heartbeat. This shows the electrical conductivity of the skin in the palm of his hand, a measure of perspiration which increases under stress, and this shows the pattern and intensity of the electrical waves emanating from the brain. It has been shown with human subjects that all these readings vary markedly depending on whether the subject's speaking the truth. He picks up a large piece of cardboard, one red, about 3 feet on the side, and the other black. A rectangle, 3.5 feet long. He turns toward the Knamet. Which of these is longer than the other? Red. On the machine, both needles leap wildly. So does the line on the unrolling tape. I shall repeat the question. Which of these is longer than the other? The black. The instrument continues their normal rhythm. And how did you come to this planet? Walked. There's a ripple of laughter in the room. One more. How did you come to this planet? In a spaceship. Many such experiments were made, and my colleagues and myself are satisfied that the mechanisms are effective. He half turns toward the Knamet. Now, I shall ask our distinguished guest to reply to the question put in the last session for several delegates. Namely, what is the motive for the Knamet people in offering these great gifts to the people of Earth? On my planet there is a saying, there are more riddles in a stone than in the philosopher's head. The motives of intelligent beings, though they may at times appear obscure, are simply things compared to the complex workings of the natural universe. Therefore, I hope that the people of Earth will understand and believe when I tell you that our mission upon this planet is simply this: to bring you the peace and plenty which we ourselves enjoy, which we have in the past brought other races throughout the galaxy. And when our world has no more hunger, no more war, no more needless suffering, that will be our reward. Months pass.
How many of them are here now? Anybody ever figured it out?
A few thousand, I guess. They've got embassies in every country now. For every one that comes, 1,000 of us take off in their ships to visit them. That's the odd thing. The fantastic ease with which human beings make adjustments. One day they watch with bated breath while a single person orbits around the world in a rinky-dink cubicle. and they think that this is the most historic moment in the history of mankind. A year later, they stand in line, waiting to get in a spaceship to take them to 100 miles away in space, and they act and react as if it were a weekend picnic in the country. The strange and complex sanity of man, nothing phases them.
Are you going?
I'm on one of the 10-year exchange group's waiting list. What about you, Patty?
I'm on the list too. The trouble is their quota's filled 24 hours after they make the announcement of a new trip. But while I'm waiting, I think I'll do the next best thing. I'm studying their language. I remember a professor of mine told me that language reflects the basis assumptions of the people who use it.
She lights a cigarette.
I've got a fair command of their spoken lingo already. It's not hard, really, and there are hints in it. Some of the idioms are quite similar to English. I think I'll get the answer eventually.
More power? I gave up a month ago. They write in ideographs worse than the Chinese, but Eve can help. You in any way. She moves away, a strange look on her face. Did I say something? Pat shakes her head.
If you could help me, that was the phrase, wasn't it?
Chambers nods.
The only thing you can help me with is...
She looks off. Is what?
Help me get rid of this strange little knot inside me. This very funny, persistent, nightmarish feeling.
Nightmarish?
That's right, a little sixth sense, if you will.
That tells you what?
Tells me that maybe we should have looked this gift horse in the mouth.
There's a long line of people, each carrying similar small handbags. There's a festive air, even in the somewhat dark, cavernous aspect of the room. Several signs point with arrows and read, "Loading platform, this way." They tell me they've got a mean temperature of 76 degrees on their planet, and the sun never goes down. And their clothing, it's a metallic substance, just beautiful. Kind of like a spun gold, and my sister says the day you land, they take you on a conducted tour through all their shops so you can pick up as much of it as you want. It's just one big holiday when you get there. They even got a form baseball or something like it. Leagues and everything, just like here. Man, I don't think I'll want to come back once I do get there. And the whole trip, it's millions of miles, mind you. The whole trip just takes a few days. The line starts to move and we hear the voices of excited delight, and Chambers steps into the back of this line. There's a giant cavernous door which is now open as the people file through, a space saucer landing ladder now. Can be seen beyond open doors, and Chambers suddenly hears Pat's voice calling.
Mr. Chambers? Mr. Chambers!
She runs toward him. She reaches him out of breath and pulls him to one side. Hey, you're just in time to say goodbye.
I know. Can you get out of this? Can you refuse to go?
Are you kidding? I've been waiting 6 weeks for this. And don't say that out loud, or there'll be 1,000 people trampling over the two of us to take my place. She looks towards the door, this time with an unconcealed horror. What's the matter, Pat? What's going on?
I finally deciphered their language, all of it. I read their book.
A Kanamit's voice rings out.
Please move ahead. You're holding up our departure. Kindly move ahead.
Well?
Mr. Chambers, the first page is just a collection of English words with their own translation, but the rest of the book...
Kindly move ahead, please. Through the doors. You're holding up our departure.
Yeah, write me about it. I'll have plenty of time to read letters. I'm going up there for a rest more than anything. The last of the passengers are disappearing into the ship.
Not so much time as you think, Mr. Chambers. The rest of the book... To serve man. It's a cookbook.
For a moment, he looks stunned. Slowly, a huge hand comes in to touch Chambers' cheek, pinch it lightly as if feeling for tenderness. Then the hand gently but firmly turns Chambers around and propels up the stairs. And they very slowly close up. And this is the very explicit. and very specific difference in points of view. To the wee ones, the little folk called man, it's a marvelous adventure, a voyage to another planet, an exciting sojourn to another section of the galaxy. But to the very large, granite-faced inhabitants known as the Kanamits, it's nothing more than a cattle call. A very comfortable provision ship bringing food from the other end of the universe. Like I say, it's all in the points of view.